Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I guess we're still in morning, gentlemen. I appreciate it. As you know, I struggle a little bit with the idea of flexible pricing, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it a little more, and I appreciate Mr. Horst going through kind of the process of what we're looking at now, but sometimes I can be dense and I need to understand it a little more clearly in some plain English. So I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of a theoretical here and see where we go. Let's say we've got Topper's Bourbon, which can be sold, which could be a surprise to many people in this room, at $25 a bottle, and that could be marked up 20%. And then we have Pyle's Bourbon, which we're all going to assume would be the better bourbon from the chairman. But let's just say that's not the case, all things being equal.
There probably wouldn't be as much of it.
So if we have the chairman's bourbon at $25 as well, but that's marked up 25%. So, I'm trying to understand why we're not putting one bourbon at a competitive disadvantage. What goes into making that determination of how we can mark up one product when we're purchasing at the same cost, the same, again, let's say all things being equal, the same product. What goes into saying, well, because I heard you earlier, you said about maybe kickstarting certain brands, like Topper's not selling as much, we need to kickstart him a little bit. And that concerns me when we're talking about market supply and demand as opposed to being solely on the product, but also now what we're putting on as the markup. So if you could explain to me the process of the Topper Pyle Bourbon and how we're going to reach different markups and if that is the case or even if that's happening.
Well, the first stage is we would listen to both of you independently, but how do you want your bourbon positioned on each product? Then we taste it and we evaluate it and where you want that. And I said, we listen to the supplier because the supplier has unique thoughts on where they want it positioned. Do you want it to be positioned with the standard bourbons? Do you want to be positioned with the premium bourbons? And so then all those other competitive sets have retail pricing levels. You also, each product, if it's sold outside of Pennsylvania, we know what the pricing is around us. And we ask you to come and tell us what your sales numbers are around us on where this product is positioned before we ever get to retail price. If everything's equal, if the quality of the bourbon's equal, that value proposition between the quality of the bourbon and what the price ultimately is going to be, and you wanted, both of you would like it positioned at the same level, everything, it's going to end up at the same retail.
And just real quick, the process of making sure that all things being equal, because if you're talking to both of us, one of us will probably suggest that our product might be superior in some way. So what is the process of saying all things are equal? You say there's a testing, there's a tasting, there's a looking around at other states, which I assume that's a product or that's a job that would be pretty popular within the industry.
So our buyers are all split to where their focal areas are. And as Mike said, that the wine buyers buy for certain regions around the world. But so the wine buyer buying Australia, we have two spirits buyers. And they divide the spirit portfolio in half, but by supplier, but they also work closely together. So they are concentrating on their own group of products. They become experts in those group of products. So, as I said, it starts out with a meeting with the supplier when they submit what their marketing plans are going to be in the state. They submit how many times a year they are going to offer a discount, where Chairman Pyle may want his bourbon priced higher. Because there is a value proposition to where that retail sits on a product. But in the end, then we'll make a decision on the retail price.
And if I could add
Sure.
one thing to that, is that you're determining what your cost is of $25. We determine the margin, although working with you. All right, so we own the retail price. So you talked about your bourbon being at 20%, chairman's being at 25%. Those are in discussions, but Dale and his team really have you know, they own that.
Right.
Whereas in the past, we didn't own that. So I just wanted to bring that point up, that you can say it's at 20% and it's at 25%, and those decisions do come out of negotiations, but the final decision is really Dale and his team, and ultimately the chairman and mine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.